gentlemen, welcome to the Purgatorians cast interviews. In this series, you shall be able to find out more information about the cast, what other projects they are currently working on, as well as their views about their character and the show. Today we have Lizzy planned, who voices Kimberly Hamilton in the show. Thanks, Lizzy, for joining us. What was your initial response when you read through the synopsis of the Purgatorians and the cast of characters involved?
As I read through the synopsis, quite honestly, my first thought was, wow. Purely from how many characters there were, let alone how inclusive and diverse those characters were. I've auditioned previously for projects with larger casts, but I've only once before been involved in a project where there are over 30 cast members. I feel somewhat guilty in admitting that I very often skim or just don't read project bios, but when I saw just how much detail had been put into this one, knowing as a project creator myself just how tedious the process of creating a casting call is, let alone one of this size, I read through everything and was just immediately sold on everything. The whole thing just appealed to me in so many different ways, especially in considering its involvement of things that are often prevalent in my own work, such as abuse, murder, homophobia, and other generally depressing yet increasingly relevant occurrences of our current society that I constantly feel need to be addressed through any form of media, and the Purgatorians does just that, and in an entirely fictitious and engaging manner, and for that I truly take my hat off to Paul for his fantastic writing.
Why did you want to take part in such a large project?
Initially, one of my main motivators to audition for the project was the fact that the project was paid, and as a student in their last year before going to university, this is obviously very appealing to me. But while I am shallow in the sense of my poor financial management, I can honestly say that I just love being in larger casts. In fact, I find that I greatly prefer it. At school, the productions comprise of roughly 30 actors each year, and while of course we're all students between the ages of 11 and 18, there's a real sense of community and teamwork between us all, as we work for months and months and months on end to fashion something that is entirely our own. I just find that larger projects give more scope to what's being created, and with a near excess of such interesting characters, like in the Purgatorians, the plotlines just become interwoven entirely, and that much more exciting to watch unravel.
Tell us, what inspired you to become a voice actor?
I've always been rather a cynical person, even when I was little, and was often curious about how cartoons and animations could have voices if they were just a bunch of lines on a computer screen. So, in a sense, I always knew what voice acting was, but didn't come to pursue it until much later. I used to watch a lot of things like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, and was a huge fan of anime when I was about 12 or 13. One day I was watching an anime where I completely fell in love with the voice of an incredibly talented voice actor called Vic Mignogna. So I searched him on Wikipedia and found a list of all the other shows he'd starred in, and my obsession with his voice progressed from there for a number of years. When I was 14, I chose drama as one of my GCSE subjects, mostly because I enjoyed the subject, but just a little bit to spite my parents, who said it wasn't an appropriate option for my future. And for the next 2 years, I learned about the fundamental components of theatre, one of which was how to use your voice. As rather a tall and not at all flexible person, I wasn't so fantastic at being a greatly physical actress, but discovered quickly I was very good at various accents and voices, and was able to portray a wide variety of emotions through my voice alone. My teacher told me I had potential in my voice, but at the time I had no idea how to practically pursue it outside of the classroom. I was finally introduced to a site called Casting Call Club by a friend who wanted me to audition for one of her projects. This was before I had a microphone and was recording off my laptop speakers, and so the recording quality was kinda similar to that of a particularly mouldy potato. But I refused to let this get me down and auditioned for a couple more projects, but was rejected every time for my poor microphone quality. I was told that I would have been strongly considered if I had a proper microphone, and, after many months of begging and begging and begging, I unwrapped a blue-ice snowball on my 17th birthday, and the rest is just history.
Is this your first show, or have you done other voice acting projects?
I'm very pleased to say that this is not my first show, though so far it's the most professional and definitely the most well-organised. While the majority of my roles so far have been for video games and feature-length film projects, I think that working on long shows is perhaps my favourite, as I really feel it allows me to show off my full range of talents over a longer period of time.
In your opinion, what separates this show from the others you've done?
Obviously, one of the most prevalent things about the Purgatorians as a show is that it's paid. As previously stated, it's also incredibly well organised and professional, unlike a majority of previous and continuing projects I've been cast in, which are often somewhat erratic and greatly varied in runtime and deadlines, which just makes things confusing for everyone involved. The show's also extremely well written, and as a stickler, I'm only glad to have found so much correct grammar and consistent characterization in the scripts thus far.
How much input do you have in the show? And does the creator of the show keep you informed about the decisions being made?
We're informed pretty much every day of everything going on to involve the project, and I think we all have a surprising amount of input that does go into its production. For example, I've already volunteered my services as an art student to create character art and concept art, and I'm really looking forward to helping out in my little corner to help the show take shape.
Please tell us something about your character.
Kimberly is 25 years old as of the first episode, and is described on multiple accounts as being incredibly conventionally attractive. She has these massive breast implants, which are often a distraction to Jamie, much to Kimberly's amusement and Toby's disdain. I actually see a lot of myself in Kimberly, in that she's rather sassy, she's considerate and tries hard to be kind, but is prone to running into things with all guns blazing, without much thought to the consequences. I remember reading through the character description and how it described her as the kind of woman who would run headfirst into a fight without thinking things through first and just thinking, yep, that's me, I'm definitely auditioning for her.
What do you feel will be the hardest part of bringing your character to life?
Despite the many similarities between myself and Kimberly, I kind of feel that the biggest challenge in voicing her is our age gap. Kimberly is 25 and I'm currently 17, so she's a whole 8 years older than me, and I have no idea what can happen between the teenage years and actually becoming a fully fledged adult. I feel as though I pride myself on being a very untoward and occasionally petulant, sassy, and unconventional teenager, but despite my headstrong and somewhat selfish personality, I'm completely aware that I rely on my parents for just about everything, so honestly, it's a challenge for me to imagine the life of someone who's in control of themselves in a way that I won't experience until I leave for university in a year's time. I suppose I'll just have to do my best to think like an adult, and try not to flake out over the imminent prospect of what a mortgage actually is, because I still have no idea.
If you could have chosen any character, male or female, who would you have chosen and why?
If I were to play any character, it would absolutely have to be Toby Harper. I get such an absolute kick out of playing the more manic and misunderstood, usually antagonistic characters, and I feel as though they've become my typecast already. At school, there are 2 shows every year, the main school play and the sixth form play for students aged 16 and up, though I was in my first when I was 15. The sixth form plays are very similar to the Purgatorians in how challenging they are emotionally and topically, the most recent of which being Chat Room by Enda Walt, where I played a female version of the character William, who is a sadistic schoolboy abusing anonymous chat rooms to try and convince vulnerable people into committing public suicide, so obviously he's not so nice. Between 4 school plays and sixth form plays, I played the manic villain 3 times, so swearing and screaming and kicking and generally being unstable are what I seem to be best at, and by far the most fun in my opinion.
What can you tell us of the story of the show in terms of themes and such?
The show's main theme seems to be plot twists everywhere, but other than that, the actual themes seem to revolve around corruption and redemption, abuse, fear, pack mentality, just all kinds of things like that just whirling around like this evil sandstorm. It's a pretty intense collage of themes with subtle undertones of comedy, and it's certainly the most ambitious project I've been involved with to date.
If your character is to die in the show, how would you most like to see this happen?
If Kimberly ever were to die, I'd want it to be in the most melodramatic, heart-wrenching way possible. I'm an absolute sucker for dramatic and tear-jerking death scenes, and I love voicing them even more. I voiced a number of deaths over the past few months, most of which were very brief things such as being stabbed, but I find it so much more interesting to be allowed to explore my capabilities as an actress in assimilating suffocation or some emotional soliloquy on my character's deathbed as the unrealistically handsome male love interest holds their hand for the last time. In matching Kimberly's personality, it would of course be the consequence of her running in without thinking and getting shot or something. She would of course take down whoever shot her too, just for the satisfaction of taking revenge, even in her last moments.
In your opinion, why should people listen to this show? In other words, what would keep them coming back for the next episode?
For one thing, the writing is spectacular. From what I've read of the script so far, the story is captivating and intricate, and the characters are all unique. Aside the script, the actors I work alongside are so diverse and so incredibly talented. I found myself on a cast list beside actors I've wanted to work with for so long, and a number of returning co-stars, and the range among us is simply remarkable. The main reason I'd commend people to support the series is because of the intense passion and perseverance of our director Paul, who really is pouring his heart and soul into the project to keep us constantly updated, to give us the best possible resources for recording, offering tips and advice, and just for his general patience and concern over all of us. He's a great guy, and I think anyone with even the remotest interest in the show owes it to him to keep going. He's the backbone of everything we're doing, and I'm really grateful to have a director who's so genuinely passionate and hardworking.
Any plans for after the show ends?
Even after my role on the show ends, I'll still keep up with everything that goes on. The project's too big and too important to me to pass up missing the rest of the series because of something like my character dying or mysteriously vanishing or anything of the sort. I'm hardly going to get all sour that Kimberly is dead when death scenes are one of my favourite things to voice, even though that sounds kind of weird. Besides, as part of the Purgatorians Facebook group, I rather doubt that Kimberly will get killed off and I'll then promptly be removed from the group just like that.
Imagine you are your character. Any final words from them for the viewers?
As if I have any time to waste on idle chit-chat when the horses need to be fed. I think I'll leave the inevitable flirting with strangers to Johnny, thanks. Besides, this one doesn't seem to know where my eyes are. Up here, darling. There we go. See you around, whoever you are.
Thank you, Lizzy, for joining us, and I wish you and your character every success in both the show and your future roles. If you at home want to take a look at the other projects Lizzy is working on, or for more information, please check the links below. If you're looking forward to the start of the show and this has piqued your interest, please do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. Next week, Liara Morris-Clark will be joining us to give their opinions about their character, the show, and current projects. I hope you will join us. Until then, goodbye.